Hi, and welcome to JumpRope's District Edition demo. Going to be doing a quick walkthrough of our software, and we're going to start out with some of the reports that we generate, just to kind of give you a context for what the data looks like that we collect and report, and then we'll show you how, as a teacher, you can put all of this data into JumpRope. So to start out, we have a progress report for Garrett Abernathy. He's a high school student in our demo school, and this particular report that we're looking at here is a fairly typical progress report. It starts out with the course as being the sort of top level of the report. So we have AP US History here, and Garrett has an overall score of 2.7. Underneath that, the first thing that we like to do is to separate out the academic standards from the character or work habits or habits of work standards, whatever your school might call them. The language is customizable in JumpRope, so a lot of the things in here that you'll notice, you might think, oh, this isn't exactly how our school does it. That's fine. We don't have probably two schools who do things exactly the same way. So the names that you call things, your exact settings or philosophy, all of those things can be tweaked inside of JumpRope. But here we have the academic mastery, and then down here at the bottom of the report, you'll see here we have Garrett's work habits. And then the next layer underneath the academic mastery are the graduation standards. And so here we have applications of social studies knowledge and skills, we have civic engagement, and we have history. Underneath the graduation standard, we have the performance indicators. And so underneath the applications of social studies, here we have construct and present arguments, both orally and in writing, and develop compelling inquiry questions and conduct research on current social studies issues. And then underneath each of the indicators are the assessments. And so in JumpRope, you'll always be directly assessing the lowest level of standards. So in this particular example, we have a two-tier system with graduation standards and performance indicators. And so underneath, so we'll always be assessing the performance indicators. And then the graduation standards will always be aggregates of their underlying performance indicators. So each assessment has some various properties of it. We have a date, we have a type, the title of the assessment, and then we also have the weight of each standard, or the weight of each assessment as well. And some of these here don't have any weight next to them. It just means that they're weighted a 1. And then anything with weight indicated is something that the teachers changed. So here the debate is weighted 2, so it's worth twice what any of these other individual assessments are. And then we also have this journal here, which is weighted 0. And so it's a great way to track formative assessment, is to weight an assessment in JumpRope 0. So as a teacher, you can put the score in, you can see it next to all the other work that the student's done on that particular indicator, but it's not going to actually count towards this overall score for the indicator. And in calculating that overall score, JumpRope has a number of different methods that you can use to determine what that overall score is. So we have some trending calculations, which are our most popular, including power law and decaying average, which are seen here on this report. We also have things like max value, most recent, we can do weighted averages. So a lot of different options in how to determine how these indicator scores are calculated. In our district edition, this is set up by the district or school, and that way all teachers using any of these standards or indicators will all use the same calculation method. So you wouldn't really run into a situation like we have here on this report where construct and present arguments is calculated using the power law, and develop compelling inquiry questions is using our decaying average. So just real quick, I'll talk a little bit about how power law works and how decaying average is a little different than power law. So power law is a calculation introduced by Marzano. So it's a function in mathematics, but Marzano kind of took it and tweaked it for the 1 to 4 scale, and introduced it into standards-based grading. And so what it is a trending calculation. And if you imagined all these different assessments being graphed over time, power law fits a curve to that function, to those distribution of scores, and says what's the next most likely score that the student's going to receive based on their scores here. So here we have fairly inconsistent scores, but showing some growth. So the 2, 3, 2, 4, and so it comes out to a 3.2, which is what we could probably expect for the student's level of mastery. Power Law does have a few setbacks. It cannot incorporate assessment weight. So even though this debate here is weighted 2, Power Law has no way of incorporating that weight into its function. So Power Law is sort of a binary in how it handles its weight. It's either weighted and is used in the calculation, or it's weighted 0 and it's exempt from the calculation. So because of that, because of the weighting issue and because people want a trending calculation that can also incorporate assessment weight, we developed the decaying average, which is a JumpRope function that also incorporates trending into its calculation. And what it does is it takes the most recent assessment that you've given on a particular indicator and gives it its full weight. But then the next most recent assessment will be weighted 2/3 of its actual weight. And then the next one will be 2/3 of 2/3, so 2/3 squared, and then here 2/3 cubed, and this one will be exempt from the calculation because it's weighted 0. So decaying average allows for teachers to be able to weight assessments, but also still trending and not using like a regular average in the calculation. So by far those are our two most popular calculation methods that people will use in calculating the indicator scores in JumpRope. So then once we have these indicator scores here calculated, next step is looking at how do we calculate the overall score for a particular standard or graduation standard here. And the graduation standard will be an average of the underlying indicator scores. And we have a couple different ways that we can average these based on different weights. I won't go into those, but a lot of different ways to customize how this average is actually calculated. And so that 2.6 is an average of those two underlying indicators here. And then in order to get the course grade, we'll average all of these graduation standards into the score. So this particular report that we're looking at here, we kind of call a course-based report, since the course is the top level of the report, of the grouping here. So course-based reports are sort of one concept. They're a little more traditional, right? We're going to take all the standards and indicators that a student's been assessed on during that particular course, and we're going to average those to show, during this learning experience, how well did the student do. We also, and this is probably one of the most powerful features in JumpRope, have a concept of a proficiency style reports. And whereas this report we're looking at different standards into one course, proficiency report sort of flips that and says, let's look at how the student's done on all of their ELA standards or on all of their social studies standards. So in this course, we don't have any examples here, but potentially we could also be assessing ELA standards in this course. We could be, we are assessing work habit standards, so we're assessing a variety of standards and indicators in a single course. But in the same way, we can assess ELA standards in a science course, in a social studies course, in a math course, anywhere. As a teacher, you have access to all the standards and indicators across the entire school. And so this particular report that we're looking at here is a proficiency transcript, and what we're looking at here is 4 years of accumulated data, potentially, depending on where the student's at, and all of it combined from all their courses. So, for example, here we have the social studies, right? Applications of social studies process. We have history. So we have some of the same standards that we were looking at on that previous report, but behind these numbers here that JumpRope's calculated could be assessments from multiple courses over multiple years, all aggregating into this one report. And so this is sort of the big shift in a place like the state of Maine, where we now have students need to demonstrate proficiency on all their standards in order to graduate, and this report can help guide that information, show you where students are, where they need to improve, and which standards they've met. And the great thing about JumpRope is that as you're putting scores in, and as you're working in your own course here, all of this information can be used in both reports. So we have So as you're putting in your assessment scores here, they're also being built and used in the proficiency report. So you enter scores once, JumpRope can use it in multiple locations and multiple different ways to be not only determining what's the score in your course, but also their progress towards graduation on all their standards. All right, so now we have a good idea of sort of what the data looks like as it's coming out of JumpRope. We're going to jump into the software, and I'm going to show you, as a teacher, how do you put all this information in? What do you need to do to generate one of those reports for your students? And so here we have JumpRope. We're logged in as Mr. Niven, and we're going to go to the Plan tab. Gradebook's separated into two components. We have the planning component, and we have the Gradebook component. The planning is where we'll set up our course. We'll pick our standards and indicators that we're going to assess, create our assessments, and align those to the courses. And then from there, once that planning's been done, we'll go to the Grade tab and show you how you can enter scores in for individual students. So I'm going to select our AP US History course. And since I've already done some work setting up this course, you'll see that there is a list of standards and indicators here. On the right, we have the unit, the economic spectrum, and then the list of assessments underneath that. So if I wanted to change or add any other standards to the course here, I can go to Manage Course Standards. And what this is going to do is pull up the district bank of standards. And this is what makes our district edition a little different than our other editions, is that the standards are provided to the teacher by the school or district. And this way each teacher is assessing the same exact set of standards, and also it saves you a lot of time from having to enter in all those standards for yourself. So we can scroll through this, see the different indicators here that I've selected, and I'm not going to add any more, but if I wanted to, we could click off any of these checkboxes here, add more standards. You'll notice that in our demo account we have K-5, 6 through 8, high school standards. So as a teacher, you have access to the whole district set of standards. So if you're a math teacher, you can see science standards, technology standards. You can see all the different standards and assess all of them in your classroom. You can also filter, so you can search by different standards. You can filter by content area, by grade level as well, to make it a little easier to find the specific standards that you're looking for. All right, and so I've already imported my standards here, and then now we have the assessments. And if I want, we can click on any of these assessments here, and you can see the corresponding indicators that they're aligned to, highlighting there on the left. Once I've created my unit and all my assessments, if I want to, if I'm working with other teachers, you can always share these units. So if I go to this little edit button here, not only can I share, you'll see this unit is aligned to multiple courses. So I just create this unit once, shared with all my AP US History courses, so I don't have to redo this work for each section that I teach. But also, if I want to, I can make copies of this unit. I can send it to other teachers. There's a lot of ability built in to collaborate and to make sure that you're not doing the same work, over and over again. And each year, once you've, finished a year, you'll have access to all of your units to make new copies of them and to continue doing that same work in the following years. All right, so now I can click on New Assessment. And each assessment has to have a number of properties in it. In order for you to be able to create it, we have to have a title. Get really creative here with my assessment titles. The unit, it already knows we're in the economic spectrum unit. The type. For our particular demo here, we have formative and summative, but these can be customized at the district level, so we can have various different types instead of summative formative. It could also be used formats, so things like projects, papers, tests, and those kind of things. You can add a description if you'd like. Have to have a due date. Let's say it's due this Friday. The weight here you can modify if you'd like. You can choose a few other options, whether it's published in reports. We can mark this as upcoming, so I can say, hey, I want this to be displayed in the parent and student portal until the 27th, and this will allow students to see that this work is upcoming, and it will also, if we add an attachment, let's say, so if we go here to add an attachment, I'm going to upload a file from our computer, maybe a PDF file, maybe attach a Google Doc to it, lots of different options. I'm just going to add this picture here, and this might be the PDF or worksheet, could be a link to a YouTube video, Khan Academy video, any types of resources, and we can add multiple links as well. But now that I've uploaded this and marked this as upcoming, any student will have access to this particular assessment and all the resources that I've shared with it on the parent and student portal. So we're going to create our new assessment. And the final step in creating assessments is making sure that I've decided which performance indicators this assessment is gathering evidence of for me. And so in order to do that, I can just click these check boxes here. So super simple. Just grab a few of these indicators, and now this assessment that I've created is aligned to these 4 indicators, and I'll give 1 score for each indicator that I've aligned it to. So this particular assessment, I'll be giving it 4 different scores. One for how the student performed against each of those indicators. And so that pretty much wraps up the planning process in the district edition. And planning is something that you can do as you go. You can set it all up at once. You can go back and modify anything. So it's very easy to make changes if you'd like. If you decide you didn't like an assessment, or if you want to add new ones, you can always go through and modify any of the work that you've already done. And now that we're done with the planning, I'm going to go into the grade tab here. And similar process, right? We're going to select our AP US History course, automatically selects that unit for me because it's really the only one we have. And now it's starting to feel like a normal grade book, right? We've got some columns here, rows of students, and a bunch of scores. And you'll notice that for each assessment that I select, we have a different number of columns based on which indicators did we align this particular assessment to. And if we go to our new assessment here, we'll have the four columns here for the different indicators that we align this assessment to. And now I can start entering in scores. And to navigate through this, I'm just using the tab key. Tab will automatically do a line return for me. And you'll notice that a number of these scores are highlighted in yellow as I'm entering them in, and then eventually that yellow goes away. It's just showing you which scores have been saved. So we automatically save scores for you. We do it in batches, and it's very easy for you to see that and to know when scores have been saved. So as you're going through, if you ever have a problem with internet or something and the yellow's not going away, you get a little drop down. It'll talk about, hey, check your internet. Heads up, scores might not be saving, so you want to keep an eye out for that if there's ever any, internet connectivity issues. A few other things about how the gradebook functions. It's a little different than some gradebooks. Once we're entering in scores here, if we leave the rest of these scores blank and just enter scores for these 6 students, JumpRope is not going to calculate in any of these blank cells. In JumpRope, if a score is left blank, we just assume that you didn't actually want to enter anything in there. And so it makes it really easy to do differentiation. So let's say this assessment here was really just makeup work or an extra opportunity to demonstrate proficiency against any of these indicators. I could just score these 6 students, leave the rest of it blank, and Ashley, Emily, Patricia, none of these students are going to see this assessment on their progress report. If I want them to, if I expect Ashley here to turn this in, I can enter in M's, which in JumpRope is for missing work, or it can be customized Some districts use X or I or different letters to represent missing work. And then I'll be able to see this in my reports as a teacher, and Ashley will be able to see this when she logs into the parent-student portal, which we'll show you guys in a little bit. We can also use sort of the blank cells in different ways. So if this is group work and I've assigned specific parts of the project to each student based on which indicator I want them to work on, I can just score individual indicators within a single assessment for those students. In that way, they'll be able to, I'll be able to record certain indicators for certain students, leave it blank, and not have to worry about it showing up as missing or something on their progress report. JumpRope just won't even show this assessment under the indicators that I haven't entered scores in for. And then there's also a few time-saving features, so we can do, fill in all the blank cells with a particular score. If I hit Control down or Control over, we'll populate all the scores to the right. So, different time-saving features there for you as well. Before we move on, I just want to talk a little bit about our customer support and how we support our teachers as they're using the tool. We know that making a shift to standards-based or proficiency-based practice can be quite a bit of challenge, and we also know that you don't want to spend your time beating your head against the wall against the software that you're using. And so we've built in a ton of help docs. So if you have questions about anything you see in this demo, you can always go to support.jumprow.pe, and you can see our help documents, support forums. We have a suggest a feature forum as well. And there's also the ability to contact our support team directly through the software. And so we have real live people on the other side of this who want to answer your questions. They're former teachers who taught in a proficiency classroom who are, who are empathetic. As you can see, we have the emotional state there. We want to know how you're feeling at the time so that we can respond in a way that matches your feelings towards our software at the moment. And then, you can add a subject here. And then, you have space for a description, right? Obviously, the more information that you give us, the faster we'll be able to resolve your request, the fewer questions we'll ask, and the sooner we can get you an answer. But when you submit a request through the feedback form here, it'll include a screenshot with the request, which is super helpful for our support team to kind of be able to translate your non-tech speak into what's actually happening to be able to make sure we can get this resolved more quickly for you. The support is part of the software, something we offer to all of our schools, and we guarantee a 24-hour response time on any of these requests. So we want to make, we know that you're busy, want to get you back to teaching and not dealing with any frustrations with software. So you can talk to anybody. Our support is great. It's something that, a lot of former teachers at JumpRope, and we understand that you don't want to spend your time dealing with software. All right, so now that we've kind of seen what it looks like to enter all this data in, I'm just going to show you a couple more reports that you can use. The first set we're going to look at is course-based reports. And so I can go to the Courses tab here, and I can look at, we'll look at our AP US History, and go to the Master Report here. And here I have a list of all the students in my class, their overall average here. We can click into Garrett, and you'll notice this basically follows the same structure of the report that we were looking at the very beginning, right? We have Garrett's overall score in the course, his academic score, his social studies, knowledge and skills score, construction percent arguments, and then each individual assessment here. In addition to this sort of traditional report here, we can look at different types of reports. So what we're going to look at here is a performance indicator summary. And this sort of flips the data on its head. So now what we're looking at is here's each indicator that I'm teaching in my class, and each sort of the overall score for each, or for the class. I can sort this, so I can look at, what's the weakest indicator here. I can click into that, and I can see, oh, here's my class. Some people are doing pretty well. We've got a few people struggling, and we can use this information to create groups and to decide, what do we need to reteach, who needs what instruction, and work on it from there. In addition to the summary reports, we also have more table-style reports, so we can look at graduation standard pivot here, and this is displaying the 4 graduation standards that we're teaching, and then what each individual student's score is on these graduation standards. When I hover my mouse over any one of these particular cells, I can see the performance indicators underneath that, right? So here we have construct and present arguments with a 1 and develop compelling inquiry questions with a 2. So we can see, always want to be able to, same way with clicking into those scores, always want to be able to see, hey, what's the underlying data here that's really driving that particular score. And then underneath the student summary here, I'll show you just one other thing real quick. And we can add additional columns to any of these reports. So you'll notice there's a ton of different data that we can look at. And the one that I'm going to just play around with real quick is show you missing work. So if you're curious, how many assessments does each student have outstanding, we can see, here's each student. Here's Ashley. We marked her missing on that particular assessment, and so there's those 4 scores showing up there. So it's just a great way to give you a little bit of context, right? We're looking at each of these students' scores and kind of wondering, how is missing work affecting their score? And so we can pull up that little column there and take a look at that. So now let's look at an individual student. We're going to look at Garrett. And so here's Garrett's mastery report. We can see his algebra score, U.S. history, chemistry. Same way with any of these other reports. We can click into this, sort of see what's happening with Garrett, what's the underlying data there. And in addition to looking at the same way we show the missing work, we can add that column here to this report. I'll show you one other thing that we can display here, which is growth. So growth is a really neat score to see next to their particular mastery, right? It gives you kind of some context on whether they're improving or whether they're sort of stagnating, whether they've sort of dropped off, and we can see for each indicator here what the growth is. So Garrett's showing some pretty good growth in algebra. Overall on all his indicators, he's showing a 0.4 increase on each indicator score overall for the course. So again, just some more interesting information that you can look at and see next to what their actual mastery score is. In addition to the current scores, so what we're looking at here is this current term. We also have access to sort of the history of Garrett as a student. So if you're teaching a 11th grader, you could go back and see what the history of how they do in 10th grade, how they do in 9th grade. We don't have all that data in this particular demo account. It's pretty hard to fake all of that, but you can just imagine having access to how the student's done in the past can be a very powerful tool to use in planning. As you're starting your course, before you even have a chance to assess students, you can get a really good understanding of where your students are based on what their standard score were the previous year. And then to wrap the demo up, I'm going to show you the parent and student portal. So in the Biographicals tab here in Garrett's profile, we can see some information about Garrett. All of this can be imported from the student information system, so you can have access to contact information and notes and different things about the student. And we can also click on this little ninja icon here, and we can ninja into the parent and student portal. And once we're here, the first page on this report, it's really just a welcome page, and this can be customized to your school, so you can have any information that you want on here and can update it as you're going. Any of these tabs here across the top can be enabled or disabled. Schedules are great to show. At the high school, it don't really make sense for elementary school. Many of our schools don't use attendance. They use their student information system for attendance, so they might hide the attendance tab. So Grade Alerts here shows any missing work for Garrett. Here we have the debate research he didn't hand in. There's no attached files, but we could download any if there were. We can also click on Mr. Niven here and contact him if we have questions or anything about that work. The upcoming work report, so as we talked about this in the Plan tab, again, we can contact our teacher about the assessment. We see the due date, see the assessment title here, and we can also view any documents. So here's that image that I uploaded, and so as a student I can access any of the work that teachers have uploaded to the portal. And of course we have the current grades. So this looks very similar to the master report that we were looking at for Garrett. A little different though, we don't have the option to change the date range. There's really no options on how this report's formatted. All of that's determined by the school or district. We don't want parents being able to change the grouping scheme on these reports. It might change the way scores are calculated. So we set one method, and that's what parents are allowed to look at. But from there, this is set up so it's the same as what we had in our profile for Garrett on the teacher side. And then you also notice here's that one missing assessment from back in the grade alerts. So any of those additional columns like the growth, the missing work, those are things that you can enable and show on the parent-student portal so that parents and students have access to that information as well. So that was a quick overview of JumpRope. Tons more features, and it's just a small subset of kind of everything that you can do in the software. A lot of it's, like I said before, it's customizable. So if you have questions, certainly you can take a look at the help document. You can always contact us on the website if you have questions. And if you'd ever like to see a more personalized demo, we would love to do one of those for you. You can contact us through the website again if you're ever interested in that. And thank you for viewing the demo. Have a wonderful day.